Hi, bookish friends, and welcome to School Day at NTTBF, hosted by the Library Science Program at Sam Houston State University's College of Education. My name is Brandi Grant. I'm a librarian in Frisco ISD at Pearson Middle School, home of the Patriots. It's my absolute pleasure to talk to this amazing author for the NTTBF Author Spotlight. He really needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. We have the creator of Mama's Voice, a syndicated award-winning comic strip. Mr. Jerry Craft is the New York Times best-selling author and illustrator of graphic novels New Kid and Class Act. New Kid is the only book in history, you all, to win the Newbery Medal for the most outstanding contribution to children's literature. He also won the Coretta Scott King Author Award for the most outstanding work by an African-American writer and the Kirkus Prize for Young Readers Literature. Jerry was born in Harlem and grew up in the Washington Heights section of New York City. Even though you all are in your classrooms, give a huge round of applause for author and illustrator extraordinaire, Mr. Jerry Craft.
Thank you. That's going to be hard to follow, but I appreciate it.
It's worth it. This is all for you. So before we get started, NTTBF participants, you can join in on all the fun by following and posting to hashtag NTTBF22 on all your social media platforms. So let's get started. I have so many questions. It is such a pleasure and an honor to speak to you today.
Oh, good. Let me give my NTTBF story real quick.
Okay.
So New Kid came out in February of 2019. So when it came out, I hadn't done much of anything and nobody knew anything about New Kid. No one was expecting anything. And so North Texas Team was, I think, the first big convention that I went to. And I was blown away at how many people there were and the excitement and the authors. I met some really cool author friends. They became friends afterwards. But so I always look back at this event as like the one where I kind of broke out, because some people kind of knew me and most didn't, but it was really cool. And Rose is phenomenal. So there's always a place that's near and dear to my heart. So thank you.
That was my first NTTBF. Back then it was called Educator Day. Now it's School Day. And I remember you with your hat on and you were just taking it all in. And are you surprised at how successful New Kid has become?
Well, yes, there's no way around that, because you just never know. Like, I knew that kids would like it, but it's very rare to see a book get like the critical acclaim and, consumer, like the fans. And so to really have both of those going is definitely a surprise. And with all the things that have come on since then, because I just didn't know, as you probably know from the last time we spoke, I was not a reader as a kid. So to go from a kid who hated to read to someone that is, making books that kids like to read, I still scratch my head at that. Like, how that happened. It's very bizarre.
So thinking about where, when you were a kid, you grew up in Harlem, Washington Heights area, and how much of New Kid and Class Act are based upon your life?
So the house where Jordan Banks lives, the little brownstone, is in fact my house. That's where I grew up. Because when I was writing the book, I wanted to come up with things that were different about my life, especially the books that you saw that had African-American protagonists. I didn't see a lot that were funny. I didn't see a lot that were like, oh, I like that kid. I wish I was like him, or we'd be friends, So I wanted to have something that was lighthearted with a lot of humor. I always wanted to be an artist. My mom and dad, like Jordan's parents, did not think that you could really make a living as an artist. So they did send me to a school in Riverdale, Instead of Riverdale Academy Day School, I went to a school called Fieldston, where I was one of the few kids of color. So, like Jordan, every day I took the bus, the city bus, from Washington Heights, which is predominantly African American and Latinx, all the way up to Riverdale, which is completely different. I was always also one of the youngest and the smallest kids in my class. So there's a lot of that in Jordan. And then when I had two sons, we sent them to a private school in Connecticut. So that's where like the uniforms, the unofficial uniforms, you know, and calling the kids by the wrong names and some of the things, because I saw that now as an adult watching my kids go through that. So I was able to really get the nuances that I didn't get when I lived it myself, because I'm looking at it with my adult mind now.
That's really cool. So you have experience of being the new kid. So what advice can you give all the new kids in school?
Well, you know, friendships take time. Sometimes you hit it off immediately. As a matter of fact, when I did the first draft of New Kid, when Drew walks into the class, Jordan waves and he waves back, and they become friends immediately. And then when I thought about it, I said, you know, although that does happen, probably doesn't happen as often. So then when I redid it, because I always tell aspiring artists and writers, it's not about the writing and the drawing as much as it is the rewriting and the redrawing, because I am always fixing it and fixing it and fixing it and making it better and more jokes and more this and more that. So initially he waved and Drew was like, hey, what's up? And they, you know, are friends after class. And I said, you know, that's not realistic. So I changed it to now in New Kid, when Drew looks over, instead of Jordan waving like he did in my sketches, he turns his head, you know, and then afterwards they don't say anything. And in that way, Jordan bonds more with Liam. And then when he meets Drew, now there's like an awkwardness of like, okay, do I hang out with Liam? Do I hang out with Drew? Is it possible to hang out with both of them at the same time? So I think that added a much better story to it.
So I'm going to move on a little bit to your companion novel, Class Act. Mm-hmm. And what does the title Class Act mean?
So I like that because it has a lot of different meanings. So one is being in actual class, so that's a school reference. The other is being a class act, meaning, you know, you carry yourself with a certain dignity and respect for others. So, you know, his grandmother, Drew's grandmother, is like, okay, well, no matter what happens, you know, you show the world that you're classy. And then the third meaning is class as far as like a socioeconomic system. You know, like he meets Liam, whose family is wealthy, and that's not his thing. So you have the different classes, you have them being in class, and you have them being classy. So when I came up with that, which is actually on my list when I wrote New Kid, I had like a list of like 50 names for New Kid, and Class Act was like, eh. But then when I did this one, I'm like, wait a minute, that one will actually be really cool for this book. So that's where I got that from.
I thought the most interesting thing about Class Act was each chapter heading takes on the medium of other famous graphic novelists like Raina Telemaker and Jeff Kinney and Dave Pilkey. So why did you decide to include them in Class Act?
So I wanted to really expand the format a lot, you know, because like to me, Raina Telgemeier is kind of the queen of that format. You know, she basically she did a lot for us. You know, I always think, you know, without Raina, I don't know if they would have taken New Kids seriously. So anytime that I get a chance to give her props, matter of fact, at North Texas Teen Book Festival, I think that was the first time I had ever done a panel with Raina. So that was cool. I think I did one with her and Terry Lieberson. So that was very cool. And then, when Jeff Kinney showed me in my house how important reading was, because my kids absolutely were fanatics for Wimpy Kid. And then he was nice enough to do a cover blurb for New Kid, which is amazing. And then as I met other people, Jared Krzyzewska, I wanted to give him a nod with Hey Kiddo, which is an amazing book. And, there's just so many people who I just wanted to say thank you to. And also as kids read it, now they go, oh, well, wait, what book is this? What book is this? And then they'll go out and read more.
And that's the goal. Mm-hmm. One thing I did appreciate about Class Act was your bravery with going even further than you did with New Kid about addressing diversity and inclusivity. And can you talk about why you decide to tackle such heavy topics, timely topics right now, such as racism and stereotypes and colorism in a graphic novel format?
So I thought that if I did it in graphic novel format, that it would be more approachable. What I never wanted to do was point fingers and embarrass people and make people feel guilty. But if I put it in the hands of these kids talking about their experiences, that, you could digest it a little better. And the whole thing was to have conversations started. So I try not to make one person always right or one person always wrong. So I have, well-meaning teachers like Coach Roach, who wants to do everything right, and Mr. Garner, who maybe gets a little better. In Class Act, I have Miss Berg. So I have good teachers. I have Miss Roll, who is kind of like the nemesis a little bit, just to get your blood boiling a bit. And then, Andy is, Andy has his issues, but then to counteract him, there's Liam, who comes from a very wealthy family. When I was a kid, anytime there was a wealthy character, like a really rich character in the book, he was always really obnoxious. So I wanted to fight those stereotypes as well. So not only did I want to do stereotypes with kids of color, I didn't want to do any at all. So with some of the female characters, and then putting in Samira, who's a Muslim character, I just didn't want to go down the same path that I have seen before. And I wanted to really make characters that would be identifiable and mirrors and sliding doors for all of my readers.
So we're going to talk to the adults, the educators, the librarians, the parents out there. So what do you say to those adults who think that graphic novels aren't true novels or can't go deep or address important themes found in traditional fiction or nonfiction books?
So the biggest thing with that is that as a writer, I've written prose books and I've written graphic novels, and it's not like my creative process is any different. I do the same plot points and character development and story arcs, no matter what I'm doing. So that's in there, And then, not all kids are, some are visual learners, So if I have Jordan going into the school's dining hall, first day of school, instead of him saying, oh, I feel so nervous, I feel insignificant, I feel this, I feel that, I literally just drew him like the size of a spilled milk container, to show how small he feels. So you can look at that and immediately identify with something like that. And as a result, I've gotten so many emails from teachers and parents of so-called reluctant readers, or kids who had formerly been reluctant readers, saying that my kid hasn't read a book on his or her own ever. And they read your book cover to cover, like in 2 days, which is like a record. Like they've never done that. And, from the teacher's perspective, I also put in, things like metaphors and similes and, things like that, where if you want to use it and then branch off and go, hey, kids, not that this is English that I'm teaching you, but this is from New Kid. What are some samples of metaphors? What are similes? And I put those kind of things in to make it that if you want to put it in a curriculum, that there are a lot of branch off points where you can really get the kids involved in writing their own stories, drawing their own stories. How do the pictures relate to the words? And then obviously there are conversations about race and fitting in and, economic statuses, that I don't think that kids may not always have the words for these conversations, and parents may not ever feel comfortable. But, I had a teacher write to me and say that a kid came to them and said, oh, Miss Johnson, promise me that you'll take this book home and you'll read it over the weekend. And she wrote me, she's like, oh, wait a minute. This kid who's never read a book all year challenged me to read this book. He's book talking me. So she read it and they sat down. And again, this kid now can say that, he read a book, it's a Newbery Award winning book. And then he may have had to help his teacher read it because some people that did not grow up with comics don't really always know the order of the word balloons or, the panels of situations like that, that they can actually help them with, which I think is pretty amazing.
So students, that's a good point. You can be the teacher. It's a teachable moment when you have those adults that are saying, that maybe graphic novels aren't a true form of books. You can talk to them and school them on the literary merit of graphic novels. Thank you for bringing that up.
Absolutely.
I feel like, you are having immense success and will continue, but how do you overcome obstacles and negativity? I mean, I'm sure this year, last year, there have been some down spots of negativity. So how do you handle that?
Well, specifically, there are some parents that are trying to ban a lot of books by either authors of color or from the LGBTQ community. And that is sad for the kids, I think, I get so much more positive emails, again, saying that my kid or my class feels like they're better people because they're learning to empathize with others. We can't wait for the next book. I've seen kids of all nationalities dressing up like Drew for Halloween, which is really cool. I've done Zooms with a translator talking to kids in Italy. Like, that's just amazing. So, I do think that parents do have a right of what they want their kid to read and the conversation that they want to have. The only thing I have a problem is if you don't want your kid to read it, the parents that don't want any kid to then read it. Because again, some kids can't have those conversations, with adults or even with other friends. So if they sit down with new kid and they're like, wow, Drew's life is just like mine. I'm not the only one, and I feel that as adults, we should, protecting our kids does not mean isolating them, in my opinion. You let them read, and then you are there to have the conversations and make them feel like they matter. So when I see the positive feedback that I get, that far outweighs the negative stuff, because a lot of times the negative things, the people aren't even, and it's never kids, I have to say. It's adults who haven't even read the book. They'll hear things about, oh, it teaches this or it's this. I'm like, have you actually read the book? And most time the answer is no. So I don't let that get me down, because I am about the kids, getting people to read, because again, I hated to read. And, so I sit down, I sleep well every night. I am working on book 3 now. Every night, I think I drew till about 4 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning every day. I will do that again tonight. And it's just something that I know that there is a place. I know that, I help kids see themselves, because initially I did it from, an African American perspective, because that's what I was as a kid. But then as I've traveled doing book signings, I've had kids say, Mr. Kraft, how come you don't have a kid from India? How come you don't have a Muslim kid? How come you don't have, and I'm like, okay. So then that's when I really realized that I have an obligation to my fans to include them in the book and to say that they are seen.
I was just about to ask you what's next for you, because I was thinking about Rad Academy, and I know myself, I want to know about Alexandria and her puppet. There's lots of social media chatter about Alexandria and her puppet. I want to know about Liam and his continued growth. I want to know, I feel like Samira should be running Rad Academy by now. She should be the dean. So it's good to hear that book 3 is coming soonish, that you're working on it. Another thing that I'm hearing is that New Kid is going to be adapted for the big screen. And LeBron James is involved in some way. Can you give us any details? Everybody lean in. Details.
Me too. So between me and you. So LeBron James and his partner Maverick Carter have a production company called Spring Hill Entertainment. And we have been talking for a few years about doing a live action New Kid movie. And then last year, they brought Universal Pictures on board to actually, make it happen. So we just got a director, someone named Prentice Penny, who is the showrunner on a very successful show called Insecure, which is on HBO. And his kids are already fans of it, so they're going to put a lot of pressure on him, to do a good job. And I'm really excited, because it brings the characters to a whole nother level. And, one of the things that has always inspired me is to show kids of color as just regular kids, with humor, because my entire life, most of the movies that I have seen with African American protagonists have been slavery, civil rights, police interactions. And there's very rarely a time when you can just, I'm just going to sit down, I'm going to get some popcorn, and I'm going to laugh. And I know that Mr. Kraft is going to look out for me. He is not going to make me cry. He is not going to hurt my feelings. So I would like, my fans to know that the Jerry Kraft book means not that there won't ever be tough subjects, but I will not pull the rug from under you, set you up like it's going to be happy. And then the day before Jordan gets to go to art school, like his house burns down and his dog runs away. And, there's enough of that in real life. So in my books, I hope to embrace family and fitting in and empathy and seeing each other and valuing, friendship and family. So there'll be a lot of that and a lot of humor in book 3. I will say that I'm planning for it to be more of an ensemble cast, more like an episode of The Office. So there may not be one particular star. So you'll get to see a lot of Samira and Ramon and Maury and some of the incidental characters that I get so many emails. Like I had a kid come to me almost in tears telling me how much he liked Ramon and how important Ramon was to him because he hadn't really seen a Latinx character that reflected him. And that almost brought me to tears, And so, it would be great to do 15 books and highlight each of them, but that is probably not in the cards. So if this is my send off, which it may be with this group, that I wanted to give each of them a couple of moments in the book to shine. So that's my plan.
Well, we are so excited for anything that you do. So we cannot wait. There are so many passionate authors, artists, illustrators out there. What advice can you give them? Do you have any tips, tricks that on how to draw or develop characters?
Yeah, whenever I do my school visits, I always say that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. That way you listen twice as much as you talk. You also have 2 eyes, so you see things, So I don't feel like I get writer's block because I never sit down in front of a blank screen, a blank document, blank piece of paper. I am always thinking of things. So like even if I go to a fast food restaurant, I'll be like, oh, if Jordan was here, what would he be doing? If Drew is here, wouldn't that be funny? What would they eat? What would they do? Or you see things, if you keep your eyes open, you'll see some really bizarre things going on, you know. And then I think of that, like I may go through a drive-through and, something might happen. I'll go, oh, what would happen if, you know, someone drives through and he gives the person food, in the drive-through, like the guy goes in and hands him a sandwich or something as opposed to vice versa. Just silly stuff like that. And then I'll think of that during the day. And it's like, what if he, hands him something instead of a Big Mac, it's a bag full of money, and then it's like, well, what does that happen? What goes from there now? And then I'll just think of that during the day. And then when I sit down, I already have the seed, and then it's just a matter of watering it. And then you just watch it kind of grow, as opposed to, even when kids have to do book reports, if you wait until the last minute, you get that pressure. And, you may have done this once or twice in your life. You're like, oh my goodness, I'm supposed to read a 200-page book and write 8 pages by tomorrow. And you get that cold sweat and a knot in your stomach, and nothing creative is going to come from that, So I relax, I have fun, and I enjoy it. So I always put the fun and the creativity hand in hand. And I think my readers can feel that. I think you can feel that I have as much fun writing this with Alexander the sock puppet wonking you on the nose and, different things like that. And I think that's what a lot of people gravitate to.
So what is one hope that you wish your readers will take from the New Kid, Class Act, just any work that you do?
Well, I hope that you find your people. And that doesn't mean people that look like you or specifically act like you, but, like sometimes there's nothing more that I like talking to another artist who stays up all night, and draws because, we get each other. So, and it could be anyone, it doesn't really matter who they are. So that doesn't mean that, you have to hang out with the athletes or you have to hang out with these people in school. You have to do this. You find your people who you're comfortable with and you can be yourself around, and that's what I have discovered is kind of secret to my happiness is the people that I surround myself with. And, when I do a school visit, the person that the kids see is the person who I am in real life, So if I'm joking or at recess, when I used to go live to schools, I'd shoot some hoops or, talk about video games or talk about cartoons. Like, that's me, and so I never pretend to be someone that I'm not, regardless of who I'm around, and that's what I hope that kids take from this, is that they are important. And everyone has a gift, even if your gift, and teachers, forgive me for saying this, but even if that gift that a kid has is being able to stand up on the dining hall table and sing at the top of their lungs, that may not seem like a gift, and I'm not encouraging kids to do that, but that's a kid that does not get embarrassed. That's a kid that doesn't mind being seen. And I know some really famous authors, more famous than me, and they cannot stand to be up in front of a crowd and have people looking at them. So instead of always, shutting that down, okay, if it's in the middle of math class, I understand, but maybe give that kid, half hour, 20 minutes at the end of the week. If you want to get them dance in front of the class, let's see a dance move, but put some thought into it, and embrace those things. I was the kid that always drew in class. I was paying attention, but I just did listen to another artist talk, and they were saying that their teacher used to always embarrass them for drawing in class. So whatever you can do to bring out these things so that kids can really see that we do all have gifts, I think is an amazing thing, and we'll all be better for it.
That's true. So this is the time of the NTTBF Spotlight, where it's show and tell. Okay. So you're at your workspace. So do you have any cool items around your workspace that you're willing to share with us?
I do. I was prepared in case you mentioned this. So one of the things that I always want to do, also, like, seeing kids of color where you didn't see them. So, like, some of the swag that I have, I'm so proud of, like a new kid jigsaw puzzle. Like, I used to always do jigsaw puzzles as a kid with my parents, but they were always like boats and trees and stuff like that. So I never saw one that ever had kids of color, which I think is really cool. Behind me, this is cool. This is my read poster, which is a dream come true. That was definitely on my bucket list. So a lot of libraries have that. When you go, that has read real big. This is the New Kid sketchbook, which has some my tips for drawing, but a lot of space to draw. This is a page on how to do like word balloons and things like that. And then the fact that it's I love seeing this. This is New Kid in Korean, and I think it's in like 13 different languages. It's Korean, Romanian, Albanian, French, Greek, so many different ones, which is absolutely amazing. And okay, I've got this. This is for the adults, the librarians. This is the Kirkus Prize, which is a book, which is absolutely beautiful. And are you ready? You know that song, Are You Ready for This? Dun, 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 dun. This is the Newbery Medal. So it is an actual medal. So I'll take it out just for you. So if you win the Newbery Medal, like New Kid did, you get the front of the medal in gold on the sticker as the sticker. And if you win the Newbery Honor, it is the back of the medal in silver. And it is a real medal. I had never seen one. It's so funny that the first one I ever seen is one that I actually won, which is absolutely amazing. And the Coretta Scott King Author Award is on my wall. That's a big wooden plaque, which is absolutely beautiful too. So I'm proud to see those.
And you all, these are the highest honor. This is and these are amazing awards for an amazing author. Jerry, I want to thank you so much for your time, your positive energy, your much needed voice in the literary world. I feel like we could do several more hours of talking to you. You're just simply what this world needs right now and moving into the future. I wish you all the good things in all of your endeavors. And we just can't wait to see the new kid on the big screen soon. I want to thank all of you who've tuned in. I hope you had as much fun as I did. Keep in mind that there are several equally amazing author panels to explore on the NTTBF website. And I want you to enjoy your time at school day. Bye, Mr. Kraft. Thank you so much. And bye, all.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, NTTBF.